Susie, can you hear me? Okay, can I start? I'm just good to go? All right. Hi, guys. So Botbier is not a StarCraft 2 bot yet. Just because a lot of people were confused. What my project was, well, actually, I can do this. And haha. So what my magic. My project was combining my love for StarCraft and my love for technical documentation and my interest in using the StarCraft 2 API, which got released in August, and allowing more developers into that space. So you can sort of see my timeline based on this tweet. Open link. Oh, this is so fancy, guys. All right, so actually before I started off, before I even did my projects, because our projects were due in, I think our project pitches were due on October 11th. I actually forced myself to get the StarCraft 2 learning environment set up. It took me 2 days, which is going to be an important number to keep in mind because 2 days is a hell of a long time to try to set up just the development environment. Let me see if I play it on here. Will you? Anyways, well, maybe it won't, or maybe it will. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay, so anyways, this is that's the rendered version of StarCraft. Took a long time, and then, so here is, at the beginning of the project, I spent a lot of time sort of doing BS kind of stuff, and really things that aren't important, like setting up OBS and having the perfect light behind me. And that's when I reached out to Mario, who is one of my mentors, and actually set myself deadlines in between the project dates, and we actually met on a weekly basis, and had small measurable goals for me to work towards. So that was really great for me and my time management. One thing I did not realize, that going into it, was that the API is written in protocol buffer, which is an entirely new framework that is another, well, it's supposed to be a faster way to deserialize and serialize information between machines. So that was exciting. I'm just going to scroll through here. All right. Okay. 1 week, 2 weeks into the project, no, the first week into the project, I got notified. So the first week was sort of shit, and then the next week was, within the second week, I had met with Mario, and then I think a couple of days after that, I got emailed back from Blizzard that I was accepted to go to their a AI workshop that they were hosting in conjunction with DeepMind, which was really exciting, and also effectively forced me to move my deadline up a week to last week. So that was really fun. So I met with, you can see here at October 22nd, that's when I started working with Docker, and that's because in my first or second meeting with Mario, we actually met with another friend of his, Victor, and they were like, all right, what you need to focus on is how to get, because I told them what I wanted to do. At that point, my idea was to just sort of do technical, just to write tutorials, and by the amazingness of my writing, people would know. So he was like, actually, you should really consider doing a Docker file, or because Dockerizing the StarCraft 2, if you were able to put it in a container, and I could just go and spin it up a container and already have the learning environment set up, that would be a really awesome thing for you to have. And if you're going to Blizzard, that would be something that you could show off to them. So that's when I started learning how to use Docker files and writing my own Docker files. All right, my experience with Docker before this point had been just using pushing the button on our project pages that say get a container, and then magically this environment shows up, and no, not so easy. So I actually had, but magically, whenever Solomon came, so I couldn't get my Docker files to build until I met Solomon, which was kind of amazing. Creator of Docker, guys, if you don't know. I think. So it finally built, and if you can see here, my builds here they actually match with the these are units inside StarCraft. All right, Mason, who is an alum here, darn it. Why is it doing this? Oh, let me lock the rotation. Okay, Mason, who is an alum here, actually was really great in helping rubber ducky with me because I had an idea of what I was doing wrong in my Docker file, but all I needed to do was like say to someone and have him be like, what do you think is wrong? And then I'd be like, well, I think this is. So that was great. Finally. So amazing, the feeling when you go through docs for 3 hours and you're finally able to have your first automated build. So I finally was able to link up my GitHub to Docker Cloud and have automated builds based on GitHub tags, which was sweet. So selfie with Solomon. All right, this is all in here. You guys can look at this later. Cool. Moving on. All right. Oh my gosh, I'm 8 minutes in. All right. So Docker Hub. This is my. This is the container. This is my Docker repo, Docker Hub repo, and then this is the name of my container. If you wanted to pull it, which I'm going to go into later, you would do that. What my Docker container is actually built from, as I said earlier, the automated builds are built from the the Docker file that I have pushed to GitHub here. Oh, here, let's look at that. Oh, shit. Yay, okay, so here we go. So I use Ubuntu. I install this amazing shell script in there that downloads all the packages you need. Actually, there's a video that I have for this later, so I'm not going to. All right, that's cool, but how do I use it and why should I want to? Well, I'm glad you asked because I wrote technical documentation to accompany my Docker containers. So this is a post, so far I have 2 posts, but I have about 3 or 4 more planned, no, 2 or 3 more planned. But the first one was on why I chose Docker. I'm talking about kind of what I've already gone over right now about how it took me nearly 2 days to set it up and how Docker and how that might be a barrier to people who have like a not as great of an interest in using the StarCraft 2 learning environment. So establishes basically the rationale. My second post that I have is on the life-changing magic of containers. And it just, again, talks about so this is kind of a reenactment of what my computer looked like whenever I was trying to figure out how to install try to debug all the error messages that I was getting when I was setting it up the first time. And I was like, well, why don't you sit back and let a machine do the work for you, or a Docker file do the building. And then, let's see. Oh, darn it all. Well, 1 second. Here you go. So it says I can't look at this video. So I'm going to now leave this and go here to this. So I made this yesterday, and I timed my Docker. I timed it as I was building it. This is a really, it is a, as you can see, darn it, it says 14 minutes at the bottom. But it's a little, I actually speed up the time. But you can actually, so I ran the timer. Let me see, can't I do this speed like 2 times? And blah, blah, blah. So I start building it. You can see it running. Sorry, I'm trying to, how am I on time? Okay, while it was pulling the images, or actually I think at this point it had already pulled all the layers down, I talk about my blog post again. Oh, sorry, I'm getting like recursive into this presentation now. All right, so you can, I talk about this, and then right now it's downloading the StarCraft 2, the Linux headless build that Blizzard provides. What's kind of exciting is that in the video, I actually project that it will take 30 minutes, and at the end, it's a 15-minute build. So it actually beat my expectation by half. And if you consider the fact that the first time it took me to set up, it took me 2 days. 2 days to 15 minutes is an incredible amount of time saved. All right. So let me see. Oh, yes. So I want to acknowledge all the people that helped me. As I said, Mario, who really helped me keep my schedule on par. He brought in his friend Victor, who actually was who helped me manage the scope of my project. I am interested in machine learning, as I said. However, at this point, like within 3 weeks, trying to tackle machine learning and building the bot was not, like, I think talking to him helped me realize, like, maybe not make that as my goal, and whereas just making the making of bots easier for people, if that's clear. Here I have awesome screenshots of when I asked Jerome for help. So proof. This was actually when I was at BlizzCon, and I was working on my on a version of well, just continually improving my Docker file, and there was something random happening with my my commands, and Mason, who because Slack, well, it was over Slack, but this is from that, and because the Slack messages like aren't there because we're not using Mattermost yet. Corbin, who like reviewed my message, one of my posts yesterday, I basically I told him like what I'm trying to do to better understand Docker is go basically do like what happens when you ls *doc_c, but do that in terms of Docker. So if you look at the posts or you read them, which I'm not going to do right now. It goes down on a very basic level what's happening, like basically tokenizes the Docker command and talks about everything. Let's see, and Jacob Rep, who is the one of the principal engineers on the Blizzard StarCraft 2 team, and we worked a lot. He has his own implementation of the Docker container, and I have mine. There's a password that you have to pass into, so in the shell script that I copy into the Docker file, there's actually zip files that you download, and the zip files are password protected. And one of my first versions that I showed to Victor, and Mario, I had passed in the password in the command line, and he was like, maybe don't do that, because the whole point of you typing in a password, well, the password especially that you're typing in is I agree to the EULA, and if you are passing that in, then you're not actually, well, the people don't have I guess they're not actually doing that. But then I looked at Jacob's Docker file, and he's doing it, but I guess it counts because he works at Blizzard. And then, so I had problems with my CMake files. So the StarCraft 2 API, not the protocol buffer, not the protocol version, but the S2 client API. So that one is in C++, and there is an error in their documentation where they don't specify that you need, what is it? You don't need GCC 4.9. I think we needed to upgrade it to that. It was like really late here. I was going to go to BlizzCon the next day, and I remember going to Naomi and like hugging her for support. And I was like, I just posted in system engineering or low-level engineering, and I'm hoping someone from France is going to hear my cry for help. And then, and then there was like a ding on Slack, and Axel was like, oh yeah, let me try. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that was amazing. I'm glad that our school is in like 2 locations. And yeah. Okay, so from there, acknowledging that I've got a lot of help from people, now I'm expanding my impact and influence. While, of course, struggling with imposter syndrome, because I felt a lot of that going into BlizzCon in the workshop, basically because we had this chat server or it was like a Discord server / Slack, where people were introducing themselves. There was a channel for introducing them, and there were all these master's PhD candidates that were studying machine learning, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. And I very much, I don't know, there's always that voice in the back of my head that I'm not supposed to be in the room, and it's just, don't want to talk about the following things without first acknowledging that this is a constant struggle within myself. And it's just a matter of, I think, just owning it and just being, I mean, it's not, I don't think you can just ignore it, but I think acknowledge it and just be really, for me, like what I do is just, I try to be as authentically myself as possible. Am I good on time? All right, so I have a pull request to Blizzard merged. So my message to Julian, and here's the proof again. I'm an admin on the StarCraft 2 AI Discord server. So helping other people get help, as well as myself. I need a lot of help. In this StarCraft 2, so this is a StarCraft 2 AI sort of like leaderboard that they have. They are, do you see that they're referencing my version of my Docker file in addition to Blizzard's version of the Docker file? And actually, I gave them some feedback on this. I was like, you must not know how like Docker containers work because you can't just like send your Dockerized environment to someone. I mean, you can. It's just not enough. It's not going to have anything in it. Actually, what you should. So, anyways, that's an old screenshot. Okay. Future plans. My next major container version, I want to make I want to break it down into smaller images and then do a multi-stage build. Oh, exciting. I want to containerize. So this was actually this morning in Discord. They were talking. So it's also great that I'm in this Discord server because I send them links and I get really great feedback and like encouragement. But there's also someone that was asking for Command Center, which is a really popular repo for building StarCraft 2 bots. So there are a lot of people that also struggle with the C++ make files there. So there was that feature, or this feature was requested this morning to turn that into a container. I want to continue contributing to open source. And that should be it. Oh, here are resources. I have many more. Like a lot more, and they will be updated on a repo, and that is it. All right. Questions? Come on. Okay. Oh, there's someone in front.
So, as someone that has played StarCraft and love it to death, could you elaborate a bit more of like what the bot is like? Why would someone create multiple types of bots, and are these bots that you can engage with in players, and how does the environment that sets up, how does that make it easier for people to, like, why would someone want to create multiple versions of a bot, I guess, in StarCraft?
Yeah, so actually, where's my resources page? In the white paper that Blizzard and DeepMind co-authored, so I think a lot of us here know that DeepMind and Google, they did AlphaGo, and I think in one of the interviews that they did, they just sort of mentioned StarCraft as like when they were doing their press junket for AlphaGo, they mentioned how it would be interesting to do like a real-time strategy game like StarCraft, because that one would have exponentially more actions that you could do than in AlphaGo than you can do in a Go game. Blizzard read that and they actually reached out to DeepMind, and so that was how that partnership started. And the whole point of the learning environment, where you are able to build reinforcement agents and build and study deep learning, is to raise the bar in terms of research and see what kind of agents you can make because you have a greater number of action sets. I think the calculated number of possible actions is something like 100 million, which is, and I think AlphaGo had somewhere around 10 million, but I would have to check that. But the paper goes into like, just, they don't, and right now even they know that their agents are going to be failing games, and so it's really fun. Like, it's also fun to watch bots play. Like yesterday, I was watching this one map where they had they basically are doing a little bit more like supervised learning, and they tell them to do only a certain type of like build or unit build, and there are all these banelings that were just getting like trapped in this corner of a ramp, and they didn't know what to do. So right now it's just like, I think research, it's just sort of like the next bar of research to attain. They don't, I think they're really optimistic when they say it will be able to beat a simple human player in 5 years. And so just kind of like being involved in this space is kind of exciting. Does that answer your question?
So just to summarize, it seems like the learning environment is sort of to push research and not so much for the actual gameplay itself.
Right. So the
Okay,
learning
okay.
environment is the environment where you would write agents, which are as in, like
Sure.
slash bots, like that would play the game. Yeah.
Okay, so the creation of the bots is just strictly for like research purposes, though.
The learning
Okay.
environment refers to a series of there's a Python wrapper that allows you to write agents in that, and then there's a protocol buffer, and then there's also the S2 client API, and that's in C++. So that's why there was that one screenshot where it was a bunch of windows open, because there's so many dependencies going into it, which also makes it a really ideal fit for Docker. When you have so many dependencies going into it, you might as well just sort of like wrap it up in one container and ship it like that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey. First off, very cool presentation of like the tweet timeline.
Oh, yeah.
I never seen that before. It was fun.
Yeah.
So I think that there is one tweet in there that pretty much summarizes, I guess, your excitement for this, which is the one that say Docker files, Docker swarms, and StarCraft 2. Yeah. And I think that probably is the answer to the question I'm making, but I want to know more detail. My question is, you have 3 weeks. You have like a very kind of impossible problem to solve. So of just cool things, let's just stitch cool things together and see what happened. And all of a sudden you put all of these people from different companies to kind of work together and help you out. Even the creator of Docker, like how do you do, what is your secret? And
I'm like Forrest Gump. It's like I'm in the right place at the right time in like many moments of history. Like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like, well, it's obviously Holberton is it has connections. I mean, well, I think that one day it just happened that I was working like literally like banging my head on a Docker file, and they were like, and then Sylvain was walking around, and he was like, oh, we're about to take a picture of Solomon. I'm like, what? Like, it was like, I can't get my Docker. And it was very, like now looking back, I like really obvious like what I was doing wrong, but yeah. I don't know, like I just feel really, really blessed and really, I don't know. It's awesome that all these things are happening. But I do want to say, like, well, for example, people were asking how I got heard about this workshop. I use something on Twitter, and I actually actively engaged in Twitter, and I saw it announced in the beginning of sort of the end of September, beginning of October-ish, that they were doing a call for applications to this workshop, and I was like, I don't know. I was very like open and honest in my application. I was like, I'm a student. I just started in January. I want to go here to expand my network, and of course, I love playing StarCraft. And they extended the invitation to me. So that's what I had in the back of my head, even as I was going into it and feeling super inadequate for being invited. Was like, if they didn't really want me there, then they wouldn't have extended an invitation.
But you still went there. Yeah.
I still went, and it was awesome. Questions?
Well, that was super cool. I have a part answer, like when you ask, hey, so how did you get those people to help, etc. When you reach out to me, for instance, the way you exposed your question made it super easy for me to answer.
Oh, cool.
And so
That's
I think
good
that's
feedback.
also part of the thing, and that maybe that can be an advice for others. It's, I mean, I think the answer is actually in the link because I've just followed the link, and then there was a Docker file, and I'm like, oh, I'm seeing like a pattern that I know how to fix. So that's why my answer sounds extremely like short and like, but that's because there was like these patterns I recognize. I'm like, oh, don't do run CD, do that instead. But you kind of, you help me to help you. So that would be my best advice for others would be when we're asking questions, try to make so that the person who's going to help can do that easily, which is hard. My question would be if let's say I have 2 weeks on a vacation and I'm like, okay, I played StarCraft maybe 15 years ago and this seems cool. And what kind of stuff can I do with that? Or I mean, I understand that the goal is to make bots that play against each other, but that's the really like long-term goal. So what could somebody make like for now to help the cause, so to speak?
I would just say get involved with if you want, the Discord server that I'm an admin in is kind of an open environment. It's also really cool because I don't know if you guys saw, but there are representatives from both from Blizzard, from DeepMind, and from NVIDIA there. So it's just, and they're active. For example, Timo, he was the one that wrote the Python wrapper for StarCraft. And so he is almost like the primary source in terms of questions about the code. And so it's really cool to be able to have this community where if you have questions, you're not just sort of like, well, I don't know what they're thinking of when they wrote this, when you can actually just go directly to them. So I think there are tons of ideas. I think right now, so there are people that are porting, because it's a protocol buffer, they're porting it out to JavaScript. There's a JavaScript or wrapper, and then there's also someone that's really into Clojure is doing it in Clojure. I know nothing about that, but I'm just trying to. I'm wondering if I should even attempt to learn C++, but maybe I will. It just seems like a beast. But anyways. I think this community is just full of really great ideas. They actually regularly host tournaments. So, and bot tournaments. Yeah, let me see. Did I have it up already?
Is it streamed on Twitch?
Yeah, they're. No, well, I think they just have them running in the background. SC2AI.net is also. So they have, Bian Jr. And so they have you can view their matches here as well, and the replays here. But you don't have to download them, but they're ridiculous. You just see, but it's just really cool to be like, oh well, what were you doing with your wall? And one person has I think the most recent, one of the most yesterday or the day before yesterday, there's one person who has his bots. He's doing a Terran bot, and it's just walling in and not allowing anyone in, and just, I don't know, shooting them from the top. There's that. There's also map making. So because the original StarCraft maps have a lot of variables in them, what we do, one way that we test the bots to just see if they're doing a certain thing, and this is what they call it's almost like unit tests, are designing or is using the map editor that's already included with StarCraft too, and you can develop specific maps that do a certain function. So one map is, and so if the tile set's really small, then it's just like a ramp. You have a ramp and you're trying to go up the ramp, and how can you push up the ramp when you have your enemies on the top. Yeah.
Does the SC2 bot, what's it called? The bot, the AI that they're doing research with?
StarCraft 2, the learning environment, or?
No, the actual AI. What it's called. Isn't it the same one that where they made the build it?
No, so that one was built by OpenAI, and another great thing of going to this workshop is just hearing they weren't outright sort of dissing, because it's DeepMind, and DeepMind feels a certain way, then and they are Google, and OpenAI I think is Microsoft. No, yes, or is it Facebook? I don't know. Anyways, so OpenAI is very similar to DeepMind, and I know that. Well, they were saying that a lot of the team in OpenAI was actually poached from, they were interns at DeepMind. And so So if you look at their code, they're doing a lot of the same things. That said, I mean, both of these things. I mean, I'm just happy that it's open source and not behind some wall. And there are actually a lot of people that are using the baselines library that OpenAI publishes. But yeah, so specifically for the Dota, them beating Dota, I asked for clarification about that, and so the game that bot played where they beat a human was very simplistic. So Dota is supposed to be played with 5 players, whereas that game was only played with like 1 player versus 1. It had a direct line to the enemy, so they didn't have to explore the map. And it was just really simplistic. It was like the most simplified version of Dota, and like they didn't include that in the sort of like press release. Cool. Oh, okay. Sorry.
I just wanted, is there a bot that you're like, oh, that's the best bot? Is there a bot that you're like, oh, this bot is like the #1 bot of all the bots?
No, I mean, I am not at the stage yet where I'm even writing bots. If I'm writing a bot right now, it's just following a tutorial, but there's nothing, there's no sort of like, I haven't been forming my own bots yet.
Oh,
I'm
I
not
meant
at that
like
stage.
the current ones here. Is there one that you're like, oh, this is hilarious, this is awesome?
No, I mean well, as you can, like these are all released, no, so there's not one that I'm like a super fan over yet. Yeah, yet. Thank you guys.